Hello everyone, we are going to study the topic spinal cord. Spinal cord is also known as myelon. It is a part of the central nervous system. The brain and the spinal cord forms the central nervous system, and it is a tube-like structure. It is cylindrical and it extends as spinal cord from medulla oblongata. Earlier it was medulla oblongata, but when it comes out of the skull, then it is called as spinal cord. It extends till the second lumbar vertebra. Now this is the vertebral column. The vertebral column has several vertebrae that are divided into regions. This is the cervical region, this is the thoracic region, this is the lumbar region. The sacrum actually consists of 5 which is fused into one, and the last is the tailbone, the coccyx. So in this vertebral column there is a canal in the center. In this canal, the spinal cord runs. The spinal cord is almost of the diameter of the little finger, and it extends till the second lumbar vertebra. This is the second lumbar vertebra. So it extends from the skull, it comes out as medulla oblongata, then it is as spinal cord, it runs till here, and while it comes down it tapers. Tapers means it becomes narrow and it becomes pointed, and by the second lumbar vertebra it ends. So it is situated in the neural canal. Like the brain, it is also covered by the meninges. There are 3 meninges. I have explained it in my previous videos. You can push the I button to know about the meninges. These meninges are dura mater, arachnoid, and pia mater. In between these 3 meninges, the cerebrospinal fluid is found. So the same arrangement as in the brain, the meninges are found in the spinal cord. The most important thing is that the arrangement of neurons differs in the spinal cord. In the brain, we studied that the gray matter is outside and the white matter is inside. Here, the gray matter is inside, white matter is outside. Sometimes the question comes in the exams that differentiate the arrangement of gray matter and white matter with respect to brain and spinal cord. So it is just the reverse. In brain, the gray matter was outside and white matter was inside. Gray matter was in cerebral cortex. But here the gray matter is inside and the white matter is outside. So what forms the gray matter? The cell bodies of the neurons. So the cell bodies of the neurons aggregate in the center, while the axons which are covered by myelin sheath forms the white matter which is outside. This is the transverse section of the spinal cord. The gray matter is seen in the form of butterfly shaped mass, which is made up of the cell bodies. As I said right now, it is made up of the cytone, while the outer white matter which surrounds the gray matter is made up of the axons and the terminal branches. This can even be called as alphabet H. The gray matter is also known as alphabet H. In the center there is a central canal, and through the central canal the cerebrospinal fluid flows. Now the TS of the spinal cord reveals the gray matter to be having horns in this manner. These two are known as the dorsal horns. These are the ones that are above, and the lower ones are called as the ventral horns. In my previous video, I told you any depression in the central nervous system is called as sulcus. This is also a depression, and here is also a depression. This is the dorsal sulcus. Since I told you the above is the dorsal side, the lower is the ventral side. So this part is the dorsal sulcus and this part is the ventral sulcus. The ventral sulcus is always far more deeper than the dorsal sulcus, and these two are the dorsal horns. These are the 2 horns, and these are the lower 2 horns. So the horns are projected in between the white matter. The white matter is known as funiculus. The ones in the sides are called as lateral funiculus. The one in the above part, this part is called as dorsal funiculus, and this side is known as ventral funiculus. So the white matter is surrounding the entire gray matter. This side is dorsal funiculus, the sides are lateral funiculus, and this side is ventral funiculus. Spinal cord performs major three functions. First, it helps the reflexes to flow below the neck. Above the neck is the brain, so it is responsible for all the reflexes, but what is present below the neck is controlled by the spinal cord. Secondly, it conducts sensory impulses. The spinal cord has all the neurons that are made up of connector neurons or mixed neurons. So mixed ones are those which can play the function of both sensory impulses as well as the motor impulses. So sensory impulses are those which are coming from the sense organs to the central nervous system. So it is also helping in sensory impulses. Since it is moving from the lower portion of the body to the CNS, we call it as ascending tracts. And it also helps in the conduction of motor impulses, that is from the central nervous system to the effector organs. So these can be called as the descending tracts because it is coming from the central nervous system to the lower portion of the body. So these are basically the functions of the spinal cord. Now let us see the first function of the spinal cord. What is a reflex? Reflex is an inborn, automatic, involuntary, spontaneous response to a stimulus. The reflexes are very fast. When there is a sudden stimulus that is received by the body responds to it automatically, and the response is not actually totally thoughtful. It is involuntary. You may behave in a manner which you may not be wanting to, and therefore this is involuntary, and this is inborn. That means it would be same in everyone. The inborn reflexes are similar in every individual. So reflexes are controlled by the spinal cord. So reflex is an inborn, automatic, involuntary, spontaneous response to a stimulus. This is called as reflex action. Now there are two kinds of reflexes: conditioned reflex and unconditioned reflex. Let us study the difference between the two types of reflexes, the unconditioned reflexes and the conditioned reflexes. The unconditioned reflexes are present right from birth. So we also call them as inborn reflexes, or they are natural. They are also called as natural reflexes, while the conditioned reflexes are acquired later in the lifetime. So we also call them as acquired reflexes. There are several type of reflexes which are present in a body. They are very important, and for example, when you move out in the sunlight from a dark room, the pupil automatically constricts. Nobody teaches that the pupil has to be constricted, because this happens in a young one right from the birth, that if you take him outside, the pupil will be constricted. So these are all the natural reflexes, the inborn reflexes. When the child is hungry, he will automatically cry, telling that he is hungry. Nobody has taught him what hunger is or what thirst is, but hunger, thirst and all pain, pressure, all such things are present right from the birth. We call such as inborn or natural reflexes. But what are conditioned or acquired reflexes? These are those which are acquired later in the lifetime. time. Like you people are studying biology right now. So what you are acquiring is a conditioned reflex. You will have a memory which will tell what you have studied previously. So the past experience will actually bring the reflex, that is a conditioned reflex. When you smell your mother cooking in the kitchen, the aroma of the food brings saliva in your mouth because you have already had the tasty food. So the conditioned reflex brings that saliva in your mouth, remembering that how tasty the food is because you have once tasted it. So this is by the help of past experience. So we call it as acquired reflexes. Now this figure tells about an experiment which was done by Ivan Pavlov to show the conditioned reflex. Ivan Pavlov was a famous Russian neurophysiologist, and he was the discoverer of this type of reflex, in which he performed experiments on his dog to prove this. What he did was, whenever the dog was fed with the food, Ivan Pavlov was ringing the bell. So whenever the dog saw the food, it was salivating. Saliva comes from the salivary glands that are present in the buccal cavity, and salivary glands are stimulated on sight of food, on smell of food, or on taste of food. So when the dog was given the food, at that time the dog was salivating. When the dog was given the food and the bell was ringing, again it was salivating. And when alone the bell was ringing earlier, the dog didn't salivate. But when the practice was for several months, whenever the dog was given the food and the bell was ringing, the dog became conditioned to this type of reflex, that now on hearing the bell and without the sight, smell or taste of the food, the dog was salivating. So this is what is conditioned reflex. The dog thought that now when it is hearing the bell, the food will automatically be there and it would salivate. But the salivary glands were so conditioned that without the sight of the food and the taste or smell of the food, the dog salivated. So this is a famous experiment conducted by Ivan Pavlov to explain conditioned reflex. Reflexes are very important, and most of our behavior and activities are the result of them. In fact, we experience them daily. When something unpleasant comes in our way, or when we step on a very sharp pointed object, our body is in contact with something which is very hot, the pain is experienced by the brain, and the spinal cord produces the reflex action. So what happens is that in this figure we see the pathway of the reflex action. This is called as the reflex arc. In this figure, this is the TS of spinal cord, and there are two tracts coming out. As I told you that there are descending and ascending tracts, or there are parts which are carrying the sensory impulses as well as the motor impulses. When the body touches something which is very hot, the skin is the sense organ, the receptors of the skin automatically feel the heat, and the pain actually releases the reflex which is carried by the sensory neuron. Now this impulse is carried by the sensory neuron and it enters into the spinal cord. So this is the ascending tract. There it comes into the spinal cord, into the gray matter. The one in the small, that is with the circle over here, are showing the connector neurons. The impulse is interpreted that you should immediately remove the hand or the heat will cause more pain in your hand, and therefore the effect will be brought when the motor nerve will bring the effect to the hand itself. Here the receptor and the effector both is the hand. It is not always the case. Sometimes when you see something with your eyes, if a lizard is crawling towards you, the effect is brought by your legs. So always the receptor and effector are not the same. In this example, since the hand is touching it, the hand has to be removed. So the receptor and the effector are the same. It's the hand. So the motor nerve is coming out through the descending tract. The motor neuron is coming out in this manner, and it will give the effector muscle in the arm to remove the hand automatically. This happens in a fraction of seconds and automatically the hand is withdrawn. You might have also experienced, everyone in their lifetime might have touched a hot object or a pointed object. This is all the example of reflex action. The pathway which is traveled by it is actually in the form of arc. You can see the sensory neuron coming inside through the connector neuron, and then from the motor neuron it comes outside. This is actually in the form of arc, and so we call this as reflex arc. Children, this particular diagram is very important from board point of view. In the exam question paper, the figure is asked, the labelings are asked, so memorize this diagram very nicely. Now tell me more examples of conditioned reflexes in your daily life as well as some unconditioned reflexes, and send it to me in the comment section. You can also refer to the description box for more questions from spinal cord and reflex action which may be coming in the board exam. If there is any doubt, you may even ask in the comment box. Thank you.